I'm listening to the other shows on the station. I'm, talking to friends, having meetings. I'm the only person concerned about this game, I've come to conclude. I got T-Bob saying, look, Arkansas is not great. This team, you ought to trust them. They got a good coach. They're going to be just fine. Hester's always on the positive end of some things. Hanny just said yesterday, if KJ Jefferson can't play, it's a slam dunk. Moscona's not concerned. You told me you're not concerned. I'm the only one concerned about this game.
Look, man, I think when you go down 21-0 to Liberty, it leaves, just a little hope for the Tigers, I think. I mean, I would hope that, we can get off to a similar start. I know that's kind of been what's ailing this team a ton, but, man, if we can't beat this version of Arkansas the way that, obviously preseason, how they're ranked, I think we're still looking at them from that lens in a bit. Still some of those players that got some of that preseason buzz. But to me, I'm just looking at two teams that are just playing totally different brands of football. LSU's rolling right now. Arkansas is not rolling. So I think, even with the kickoff time, the weather, whatever you want to say, I just like my Tigers in this matchup.
We'll start here as far as my concerns. You just alleviate my concerns as they come, and we'll see where we land at the end of the segment. But Arkansas is second in the league in sacks, and LSU has given up the second most sacks. We talked about that earlier in the week, how Jaden Daniels is taking some sacks, took 6 sacks on Saturday, but he's not putting the ball in harm's way. He'd rather just go down or try to get away. And Arkansas has brought a little bit of pressure. I heard the guys in the morning talking about this number about how Arkansas does get after the passer, and Jacob said, yeah, well, they were leading the nation in sacks at one point. It's kind of tailed off, so let me go check that out. And he's right. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, which wasn't against atrocious competition, it was Cincinnati, South Carolina, Missouri State, and A&M, so 3 actual football programs, and then Missouri State. They had 20 sacks through the first 4 games, including 8 against Missouri State. Since then, they've had 8 sacks in 5 games. Now, 8 sacks in 5 games doesn't sound that great, but you can manipulate the numbers all you want. They actually have 7 sacks in the last 2 games. They had none against Mississippi State and BYU. They had 3 against Auburn and 4 more against Liberty. Drew Sanders has been a real spark plug for him on defense. He was at Alabama, transferred over. He's been fantastic. Are you concerned about the Arkansas pass rush that had 6 sacks against South Carolina, had 3 sacks against A&M, 3 against Auburn, 4 against Liberty?
I was just replaying all those teams you said in my head. And,
yeah.
I don't think they're very good. I think their record shows they aren't very good, and you got a non-Power 5 team that you racked up some sacks against too. So I think the way you see, Will Campbell playing, you see Emory Jones playing, I just think those guys are playing better right now. And if they're not going to blitz and, kind of sell out to get to Jaden Daniels, which I think opens up one-on-one matchups on the outside, I just favor this matchup. And I think if they do, I think that avenue is there for them to maybe get 3 or 4 sacks in this game, because Jaden will not put the ball in harm's way. He's not going to just throw it up for grabs and, see who comes down with it. So I think if there was a way to, get sacks, it'd be that way. But I feel confident with this offensive line matchup against their defensive line. I don't think it's Auburn or Liberty or South Carolina or some of these teams.
That's a fair point. All right. Sanders, one thing, because not all sacks are created equal. Sanders does lead the SEC in sacks at this point. He's half a sack in front of Will Anderson, but he's forced 3 fumbles, which is a playmaker. I mean, that's a real key. So LSU needs to account for him, make sure he doesn't get loose and make some sort of game-changing play. It's not like he's going to come out of nowhere. They know who Drew Sanders is. So that's something that gives me a little bit of a cause for concern. Arkansas's offensive line was awful against Liberty last week. You turn on that film, if you watch the game, look at the highlights on YouTube, whatever, they weren't blocking him. I mean, and KJ wasn't running quite as much as he usually does, but they weren't. And that's such a surprise, because this Arkansas offensive line, when you look at just the numbers, their left tackle, Luke Jones, is a 5th-year player, so a very old player, but this is his first year to play, really. He's got 9 career starts. The other 4 guys have combined for 136 career starts. You're talking about Brady Latham at left guard, 32 starts. Ricky Stromberg, who's one of the top centers in the country, 41 starts in college. Bo Limmer is the right guard, 26 starts. Right tackle's Dalton Wagner, 37 starts. 37 starts. That's a lot in the world of college football. You're talking about over 2 seasons of being the starter. So this is a really old group, a really experienced group. And, they were talking to Sam Pittman about it on the teleconference yesterday. He's like, yeah, they just got to play a lot better. That's a weird deal, because they have run the ball really well for a couple of years now. These guys have been in the middle of that, and they've just played poorly the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they really have. And I think look no further than to LSU last year. You had very, very veteran left tackle, very, very veteran right tackle. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be blowing people off the line and just lighting people up with your pass protection and things of that nature. Yeah, to me, you got to look at the film. The eye in the sky doesn't lie. And that offensive line just didn't play well last week. I'm looking at Liberty just rushing for. They're getting after KJ time and time again. It was really difficult for that offense to move the ball effectively, especially when they had to pass the ball. And so I think for that Arkansas offensive line, they're going to obviously, have to play a lot better. You're playing against, to me, a lot better front. You got Harold Perkins you got to deal with, BJ Jalaris, no slob, and it's just going to be a lot different than what you saw last week, even though those guys were getting pressure after KJ. So if they don't step up, it's going to be a long day for whatever quarterback's back there. They're going to have to play big and show that experience.
Those are the concerns for me. I feel a little bit better when I start to talk about some of the other areas on the field. This Arkansas pass defense has just been a disaster. They're 13th in the league in pass defense. They're 13th in the league in total defense. Yeah, they've created some pressure and had some sacks, and maybe that's because Barry Odom looks at it and goes, well, we can't really cover, so we may as well just try to go get back there and make a play in the backfield. That would leave a lot of opportunity for LSU's playmakers to get open and make plays down the field. McLaughlin had some early interceptions, but he was getting cooked in the Liberty game a little bit, and they just don't have the horses back there that you need to run around with some of these SEC wide receiving corps, and LSU's is really, really good. So as I try to look towards the positive and go, okay, where do I need some good mojo from? If they can protect, I don't think Arkansas is going to cover very well.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it last week. I mean, I'm looking at a 5'8" receiver just going up catching touchdowns against these guys, and they're just running basic stuff. It's not like they're running double moves and setting stuff up. Guy ran a seam route from the slot, catches a touchdown. Guy runs a bang gate in the post, catches a touchdown. And Liberty missed on some shots. They threw a big play down, and they had a penalty they had to call back. Like, I think they could have scored more in the second half. Just a couple things didn't go their way and kind of let Arkansas get back in that game. But that game could have looked a lot uglier than it was, and it was because of the receivers they had on the outside. They were making plays, and so I think anytime you're looking at Malik, who to me is as advertised as we said last year when we looked at him as a freshman, you're starting to see all that come into fruition. And Kayshawn, who really didn't have the year we thought, but he's still Kayshawn, and you can just keep going on and on with her. She's got to shout out Jure too, but I feel great about the receivers against these cornerbacks, especially if Dwight's not going to be in the action.
Look, I'll let you elaborate on this because this is just a guess on my part, but it's just a feeling that I have. In some of these letdown games, some of these spots where LSU has not played well against lesser teams, especially after the Alabama game, sometimes it has been Arkansas, it was a lot of the offenses that were built around what Les wanted to do, which is just run the football dead downhill, and that was kind of your biggest strength, and you struggled to do really anything else. And I have confidence that Mike Denbrock will have a second option, a third option, if something is not working. They don't have all their chips in a basket like sometimes LSU's teams that have struggled after Alabama do. If they're trying to run the football and they're struggling with that, well, let's get Jaden on the edge. Let's try to get Kayshawn on the ball in a little bit of space. They will have different things available to them than what LSU. Well, this isn't working. Well, let's keep trying. Just keep blocking them. I think with this coaching staff, it's going to look better.
It's only so much you can do from an I formation, and I think the less approach is that let's bring another tight end in. Matter of fact, let's bring three. Let's go to goal line package. Why not? I have you. So it's not going to be that, obviously. They can spread it around. They got stuff. You've seen the plays where they give Kayshawn the jet sweep. They run the reverses. They have a lot of different things they can go to for that inside zone, and that read option isn't working with JD5, which I think is going to absolutely have to be huge. And in a weather game like this, it's going to be freezing. I think it's very viable for you to get that run game going. And if it's not, like you said, I trust Denbrock to, really kind of switch things up. And then obviously the passer that JD5's become over these past 3 weeks, I trust him, pushing the ball down the field, giving these guys opportunities, doing what I say. You may force a pass interference call, and doing this against a secondary that I think, is in that. We talked about Bama last week. Their secondary wasn't lifesaver. I think this is secondary is a step down from that. And so
no doubt.
I feel like these guys can make plays on these guys on the outside, and even if the run game isn't going.
Here's the one more stat before we get to some hoops, and then Luke Johnson on the Saints a little bit later. The something's gotta give stat of the game. You are talking about the LSU Fighting Tigers dead last in the conference in punt return average versus the Arkansas Razorbacks dead last in the conference in net punting. They might be worse than us in the punt game.
Look, we got Big Brown, man. We saw how he played last week. My man was punting the life out of that ball, setting up that great field position. So yeah, I'll take our guy, the Notre Dame transfer, over what they got over there.
Something's got to give stat of the game. Hey, these guys stink on special teams too. Maybe we can beat them.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor.
hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.